From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to today's program. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko met in Samarkand, Uzbekistan. And that was a very important meeting because during that meeting, the bilateral relationship was elevated to an all-weather comprehensive strategic partnership. Now, with President Lukashenko's state visit to China, where is the relationship headed next? Besides bilateral trade and investment cooperation, what can Belarus contribute to regional stability as a new member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? To talk about all this, Yauheni Preiherman joins us now from Minsk, Belarus. He's director of the Minsk Dialogue Council on International Relations. Also in Beijing, we have Zhang Xin, associate professor at the School of Politics and International Relations of East China Normal University. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let me go to you, if I may, Yauheni, in Minsk, Belarus. This year, of course, marks the 31st anniversary of bilateral relations. We just saw President Lukashenko visiting China. He's actually wrapping up his visit on March the 2nd. What do Belarusians make of this visit, and what outcomes do you expect to come out of this summit?
Good morning from Minsk. Well, I think the visit is seen with great interest and very positively across Belarusian society. As probably any country in the world, Belarus is primarily interested in two realms, that is security and economy, and those two realms have traditionally driven our relations. And especially now that Eastern Europe is amid a crisis, both in terms of security and economy, I think this visit is seen with particular interest. I think the two countries have already covered quite a lot of ground in the 3 decades of their relations in terms of developing economic relations. And I see that the Belarusian president noted at every meeting that the trade volume between the two countries, all problems in the global economy and in Eastern Europe notwithstanding, has now reached a level which only a decade ago was difficult to imagine. And that, of course, reflects the progress in the relationship. And in terms of security, given that Belarus is next door to the war in Ukraine, and given the peace suggestions that Beijing has recently put forward, which are now widely discussed internationally, I think this is an additional factor which adds a lot to this visit, because those suggestions are very much to the liking, but also very much the ideas that Belarus has been promoting itself in the world. And these ideas are seen as a potential, well, let's say, potential answers to those dilemmas that drive the conflicts in the region.
Yeah, it has been a strong relationship, and you can tell from terminology. Terminology matters in diplomacy. Professor Zhang, bilateral relations are elevated to, quote-unquote, all-weather comprehensive strategic partnership. And we know that this is a rare designation in China's foreign policy. Only very, very few countries, such as Pakistan, was described by Beijing as all-weather comprehensive strategic cooperative partners. What does this designation mean to you, and what do you make of the current China-Belarusian relations?
The terminology definitely matters. As you just correctly point out, Belarus enjoyed this all-weather comprehensive strategic partnership with China, a level of diplomatic relation that's not used very often in China's diplomatic terminology. I think overall, the all-weather components indicate that officially, between the two states, both sides regarded their bilateral relations at a unique, significant level. That uniqueness means in all kinds of, regardless of the external environments, regardless of what happened between these two countries domestically, two countries look for comprehensive collaboration in a multiple different policy sphere. I think that's the basic message of the terminology. And I agree with our Belarusian colleagues' overall description. Bilateral official relations between two countries since early 1990s have developed rather smoothly. It starts with a very clear mutual respect for each country's basic concerns. That's the starting point for bilateral relations on an official level. Then it gradually and smoothly expands to a set of especially economic sectors and also social development. And now we see in a very difficult external context, the two governments decided to further elevate the bilateral relation to a new level. I think that's the overall pattern.
Yeah, but Professor Zhang, the Western media's coverage of President Lukashenko's visit to China is very narrowly focused. They focus on geopolitics. Their headline describes President Lukashenko as, quote unquote, Russia's ally, bringing the Russia-Ukraine crisis into the visit. What do you see as the West's main concerns or even fears about the visit? Actually, I want to ask this question to both of you. First of all, Professor Zhang.
Right. First of all, I think there's nothing wrong or nothing surprising to see a geopolitical element in any state visits. Right? That's what states do. So it's very natural and logical to have at least one element of geopolitical consideration in official visits. The second, I think it's way too narrow to define President Lukashenko's visit to China or the Belarusian-Chinese relation as completely dictated by the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian conflicts. Right? That's a significantly important geopolitical conflict in which I think Belarus does have a special relation to it. But between Belarus and China, there are tons of important issues that belong to a genuinely bilateral agenda. Right? So I think it's way too narrow to define this visit or Belarusian-Chinese relation as being completely dictated or dominated by the Russian-Ukrainian crisis.
Yauheni, in Minsk, Belarus, what do you think?
Well, I do agree. We know that the media usually tend to connect current developments, including such high-level visits, to the current media agenda. But of course, a visit of this scale has been in the making and in the planning for quite a long time, which already tells us that it does reflect many more developments in the bilateral relationship between Belarus and China than just joint thinking about the war in Ukraine. So I think it's only natural that this has to be taken into account when we analyze the nuances of this visit.
And then on February the 24th, China released its white paper, a position document on the Ukraine crisis, urging for a political settlement. How does the Chinese position paper come across to the Belarusians?
Very positively. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, the ideas in this 12-point plan are generally very much in line with what Belarus thinks, and more importantly, with what Belarus itself has been promoting on the international arena for a couple of years. As you can imagine, being next door to Ukraine, we've been pretty much involved in the conflict development since 2014, when basically this very conflict started. And back then, Belarus was the internationally recognized neutral venue for talks. And those talks did take place in Belarus. And the Belarusian leadership would back then put forward quite a few ideas very much similar to China's vision. In this respect, I should say that even though the two countries are very different in terms of their international, let's say, roles, but also, very distance that is between Belarus and China, on these particular matters, not just on Ukraine, but broadly speaking on the future of international security, they can be very natural partners. And Belarus can become a proactive ally in promoting these ideas when it comes to discussions about what the international system, international security is going to look like in years and decades to come.
You're talking about international security. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, is playing an increasingly important role. Actually, it is accepting new members. Iran is becoming a new member at SCO. And also in the Samarkand summit last year, Belarus was being accepted. Of course, there's a procedure internally and within the SCO to officially accept Belarus. Professor Zhang, when do you expect Belarus to become a full member of the SCO, and what will be the benefits for the SCO and for the Belarus?
For one, I think Belarusian government takes the former membership of SCO very seriously. We have seen consistent, strong interest in joining SCO from Belarus government's perspective over the years. Secondly, I think the earliest time we can expect to see the the beginning of a formal adoption of Belarus as a formal member SCO as early as this year's SCO summit, which will be held by India, but a specific date for that is not finalized yet. But as you correctly mentioned, there's some procedures we need to finish. And also, as someone who are involved in the expert level discussion of SCO, I recall correctly that as SCO decided to expand its membership, include India and Pakistan as a formal member a couple of years ago, when the topic comes up further expansion of SCO membership, Belarus was already on the list of countries that has the best conditions to be part of the SCO community. I think the adoption of Belarus as a possible full member really, to some extent, promote the expansion of SCO's own organizational agenda and the mandate to a large extent, to extend from the core of Central Asia with border security as the original major mandate, now gradually expand to a larger geographic coverage as well as a further extended organizational mandate.
Yeah, Yauheni, what do you think? What role can Belarus play in an SCO?
I think two specific features that Belarus will bring to the organization are, first of all, its geographic location is going to be obviously the first European country to join the SCO. And secondly, Belarus has been active with the organization for at least 10 or even more years in different roles that the organization allowed. And it's been promoting what I call a bridging agenda within the organization, trying to bridge geopolitically, but also geoeconomically, the Central Asian original focus of the organization and its broader potential to play in international affairs. And I think it's going to continue to play along those two main directions, and in a way that will indeed help to broaden and even change positively, I'll say, the mission of the organization. That's at least how it is seen from Minsk.
Great, Yauheni and Professor Zhang. We have more questions than we have time for them, but thank you for joining us at this hour, and come back again. Thank you.